Hey guys, really don't know how to start this video, but I guess I'll start with why I'm wearing a mask, besides it being coronavirus season. I'm faded, basically. It's been about a year and some months before I went back into a meeting or a Zoom meeting. The reason why I'm making this video is because perhaps I can give some, I don't know, some type of help to other people who are faded or feel like they might be a little alone, because you don't really get to associate with a lot of the friends that you used to have beforehand. Mainly because they'll start asking a lot of questions, like why you haven't been to the meetings or the Zoom meetings or been out in service. And it gets a little annoying sometimes when they start asking all those questions and you really can't answer it, because if you did, they'll just like disown you even more. Sorry about that, the camera had fell. I don't think I can drive and also record the video. But there's a couple of people who do. I'm not sure, not a couple, but I'm sure there's a vast majority of people who actually do care about that. Me personally, I still associate with a couple of my friends that are in, and they're pretty lenient to an extent. Like they haven't really been dogging me with questions or asking me what's really going on. They've just kind of been like, hey, Jehovah loves you, things like that. Not a big deal. I don't mind hearing that stuff. It's not like I lost my love of God, so to speak. I just don't want to be associated with the organization anymore. But at the same time, I don't want to lose all my social interactions. So you're between a rock and a hard place, and it's either you make that really rough decision to just say, you know what, I'm done completely and never go back, and then also put in your letter of disassociation, or you just kind of ride the waves and just hope over time people just kind of like stop asking you, or people just kind of like, well, I mean, he lost his faith or something, and they just still hang out with you. Probably not to the same extent that they did before, but at least they're not ignoring you and not answering your I'm just gonna have to hold the phone. It keeps falling. I need to get a new car mount. At least they're not ignoring you and not answering your texts and just treating you as if you're nobody. So I guess it's like, it's kind of good, but not really the greatest. I feel like my case is a little bit more easygoing than a lot of other people's. I've read a lot of stories on Reddit. I've heard a lot of stories from people like in real life, and I've also heard or read a lot of stories on YouTube in the comments. And I gotta honestly say, man, I feel for all of you, because you guys have went through a lot more harsh things than I have. I don't want to give out too much information about myself, but my mom's in the truth, but my father is not in the truth, and my father has been my lifeline, so to speak, because I can tell him everything that's been going on with the organization from the beginning until like the end, and he'll always be there to listen to me, and that's really helpful. A lot of people don't have that, so I feel like it's a blessing that I have that. Well, I'll try to give some more information about myself without giving out too much, but I've been in the truth my whole life. I have never been disfellowshipped for anything. I never got in trouble, not once. I never ever got in trouble for anything, mainly because I didn't want to hurt my mom. Like, I was more so concerned about how my mom would react to it, rather than how Jehovah would necessarily feel about it, because I cared so much about what my mom would think of me, that I never did anything wrong. And I'm telling you, there's been multiple opportunities I could have done something terribly wrong, but I chose not to do it. So I tried my best. The only reason why I'm not going to the meetings now isn't because I did something wrong or somebody hurt me or stumbled me, I'm going off of it objectively, what the Bible says versus what Jehovah's Witnesses say. I'm also going off what historians have said and logic and what actually makes sense. I am one of the people that I have no problem if you say something against what I believe, because if what I believe is the truth, then it will stand up to scrutiny. I feel like that's logical. I feel like that makes perfect sense. And anyone who argues against that, I would kind of be confused as to why. So I'm sure many of you already know where I'm getting at with this. It was involving the 607-1914 doctrine. I'm not going to go ahead and try to explain the whole doctrine to everybody. There's so many different YouTube channels who have done a very great job with doing it, with explaining it. Some that come to mind: Lloyd Evans, ExJW Critical Thinker. I think ExJW Analyzer. I think that there's also there's this newer channel, which I feel like he did an excellent job with it, because it was more like an actual talk. So a lot of witnesses would be like, oh wow, this is great, and they'd watch it, and it makes like sense. It's like he was actually giving a talk. I think it was like Sterling, ExJW Sterling or something, or Stir. I liked his very, very much. His isn't actually that old. It's like a couple months old. And if I were to show anybody one of those videos, I probably would choose his, especially if they're a witness, because he broke it down so easily that if anybody saw that video and was thinking objectively, they would think, oh, okay, well, this obviously makes sense. But we know that with witnesses, their thinking is skewed because they want to believe. They already have this notion in their mind. They want to believe that this is the truth because there can't be anything else. And that's just a little disappointing. And I can't get behind that. And that's why I kind of just, after researching everything and taking into account everything, I became a little disappointed. For a couple of months there, I need to get a new mask as well. Wow, this thing keeps falling. For a couple of months there, I was still going to the meetings in the beginning because I didn't want to lose my friends, and then I also didn't want to cut it off cold turkey, and I wanted to make sure that what I was doing, if it was right, that I was going to do it correctly and not have any regrets afterwards. I'm not one to make rash decisions, so when I was looking up all the information on this, I was legit like, okay, well, this all kind of makes sense, but let's see. So then I did the obvious, one of the best things you could do, which is pray about it. And I prayed about it a lot for months, for weeks, for months. And then I couldn't discredit anything that was being said. It all just made sense. And it wasn't like I said, it wasn't like I had some vendetta against witnesses, or I was kind of bad in the truth or anything. Like, it was just kind of like, this just makes sense. I personally was not an elder. I was not a ministerial servant. I feel like I was very close to getting ministerial servant, but there's always little small things that I think I could have worked on, like service time. And I think being a young guy, service time was very difficult for me because I loved my weekends to do certain things that I want to do, especially after working. And I also liked to just have my own free time. I never minded helping people and, trying to teach them the Bible, but I never really felt that service was like the best avenue to reach people. I'm sure many of you know, you go out in service for about 2 hours, you find like maybe 3 people home, and the rest of the people are home but hiding. So it's like a waste of time. I never liked it because of that reason, and I didn't feel like there was anything I really got out of it besides just showing that, hey, look guys, look at me. I could be a ministerial servant because I'm going out in service this day, out of the month, every single time, every single Saturday. I'm always there. You'll see me. You'll see my face. And that even goes to another point. It's like, why is it always so focused on being seen and noticed by other men in the congregation just to get privileges, where you're a good person, you've been a witness for however many years, you've never had any problems, you've only, helped people out. I feel like you pretty much rate being a ministerial servant at that point. So it's just odd to me. But I think it's like a blessing, thinking back on it now, that I didn't get ministerial servant, because, I could have probably been in there still, and I would have been deeper. And who knows? Like, a lot of guys know this. Once you hit ministerial servant, all the sisters apparently, they're like, "Oh wow, he's ministerial servant, so maybe he's looking for a wife or something." And then all the friends do that too. They immediately like, "Oh, now you can find a wife." And I'm just like, I couldn't find a wife beforehand. Like, what was the problem with me before? I wasn't a ministerial servant. And it wasn't because God was like, "Oh, he's not ready to be a ministerial servant." It was mainly because other guys didn't see me going out in service on Saturday, every single Saturday. It's a little weird to me. I never really questioned it beforehand. I was just like, well, maybe that's just the arrangement. I didn't really care. I felt like, and I wasn't one to complain at that time about it, because the way I am, if you're going to set something like a standard, I'm just going to go ahead and say, okay, well, I feel obligated that I have to meet that standard to get to that position that you want me to get at. Not a problem. I'll do that. It's not a problem. But I just didn't have that desire and drive to really get there. So that's what happened. Been in the truth my whole life. I have all my friends and family. Well, not all my family, but all of my friends are in the truth. I would like to go back to where I started to realize that something was up. So basically what happened, it was about last year. I was doing research into the Bible, and I came across some stuff from Daniel's prophecy and whatnot. And I started looking up stuff on Watchtower Online Library, because that was the first thing you do. Started looking at a lot of the old publications, and I was like, something still doesn't make sense to me, because at that time when I looked up stuff on Watchtower Online Library, I saw that Nebuchadnezzar's date of reigning didn't match up with basically what the historians in the Bible says. And then if you look at the rest of the information on Watchtower Online Library, one part of Nebuchadnezzar's reign is this time, and the other part is a completely different time. So it didn't make too much sense to me. Eventually, one thing led to another. I was visiting this one brother. He was an elder. He's my favorite elder. He was such a good person. Like, he's honestly one of the best people I think I've ever met my whole life. And I know he wanted me to always do the right thing, and I did want to do the right thing. And that's why I'm here. Basically, I went to visit him, and I was like friends with him. He's like my elder. He's older than me, but I was friends with him. Like, we're good friends. I went to visit him and to hang out at his house. I stayed there for a few days over the weekend. And I guess he asked me one time, he said, hey, I heard hey, let's go for a walk. And then while we're walking, I kind of already knew. Like, I'm pretty perceptive with these things. You asked me to go for a walk, and it's dark. It's dark out. Like, it's about maybe 9 or so, and it was dark at the time. And I'm just like, go for a walk? We've never done this before. You want to go for a walk now? Okay, sure. I'll go for a walk. I know where you're going to ask me. I know where this is going. So we're walking, and my man is asking me, hey, so I heard some stuff about how you're probably like, you had some questions, or you're just going through a tough time. Is everything okay? And I was just like, did my mom say something? Because at this time my mom knew, and my mom, she was a little sad by it, but I told her I want to be objective about it, and I explained everything to her. She's still in the truth now, and I believe it's because she wants to believe it's the truth. So I feel like she kind of accepts it at this point, but at that point, at this time in the story, she probably was like, I can probably get my son back to come to the truth. I need to have him back. I can't lose my child. And she's like scrambling. She's a little flustered. So she probably mentioned something to him. And I mean, it's not a problem. It's whatever. I kind of expected this. I solidified it in my mind that people will talk or ask me questions, and I should be ready to make a defense. What do you know? For what I believe. So I have no problem doing that. So he talks to me, and he's walking with me, and he asked me if I had anything, like any questions or something. And I said, well, I just felt like there's something that's not making any sense. And I also don't feel that the governing body is who they say they are. And he says, well, why do you think that? And I was like, ooh, at that time too, like I was so deep in the information of it that I explained everything to him with 607, 587, 1914. And like I said, this guy is my friend, so I trusted him. He's my good friend. And I did not think for 1 second that he would say anything to anybody else and then try to like be like, hey, this guy over here, he's acting a little goofy. You might have to go ahead and take him out. But he never said anything. And I haven't heard anything yet. So I don't think he's ever said anything. I think it's just like between me and him, which I think is how it should be. If it's not anything illegal, you don't have to tell anybody the stuff we were talking about. So I laid everything out to him. And he tells me, well, let's go ahead and take a look at the Watchtower Online Library. So we go and look at the online library, and he says, let's take a look at this. And he shows me something that I already knew and that didn't satisfy the questions at all. It didn't answer any of the questions. And I'm sure you guys probably have seen this too, or someone probably said this, that the governing body is like infallible, or they basically can make mistakes. They're not perfect and they're not inspired. And I'm like, well, yes, but then I feel that when somebody who's a witness shows me that, I feel like you're just proving my point even more so. It says that they're imperfect, right? Okay, well, we solidified that. And it says that they're not inspired. Well, that tells you right there that God's not backing them. If they're not inspired, and we all know the Bible writers like centuries ago were inspired, then clearly they're not of the same like fold. So that tells me that they're not the anointed, they're not the governing body, they shouldn't be the ones leading. That's pretty much what that tells me. I don't understand why anyone would even show me that, besides the fact that, hey, you know, we're all imperfect, we just got to roll with the punches. And I really don't like that terminology, that we're all imperfect, because yeah, we're all imperfect, and that's fine. But there's a difference between being imperfect, making a mistake, owning up to it, and then changing something, versus being imperfect, making a mistake, pretending you never made that mistake, knowing that other people know about this mistake and that keep talking to you about it, and they want an answer to it honestly, genuinely, and then you just ignore them and you don't change the mistake. And the only reason I can come up with why they don't do it is because they know if they change that date, then they won't have their position anymore. So it's like about them. Nobody cares about them. All the people who are witnesses now, you shouldn't even care about the governing body to that extent. I don't know why anyone even defends them. What is the most important thing about being a Jehovah's Witness? Please tell me it's not the governing body. It's not. We both know what it is. It's Jehovah. Why else would you become a witness? Please tell me not the governing body. No one would ever say that. Yeah, I got baptized in the name of the governing body. No one ever gets baptized in their name. Well, they don't want to, but technically they probably do. And that stuff, all those questions, it just added more irritation, more frustration. And then the answers they're giving weren't satisfying. It's disappointing to live your whole life thinking that something is true, and then in the blink of an eye, it's all going down the drain. Now, can you imagine if you were like 60 something years old and found all this out? Or let's go back to 1975 or any of the other dates, 1941, I believe, and 1925, 1914, and you're like on the cusp of just like losing your life, you're old, you're fragile, and you believe this is the truth, and you've been in the truth for years, decades even, probably almost a century, and then information like this comes out, and you're an objective person, and you look at this and you say, I've been lied to my whole life. All of everything you've done is practically just a waste. That is so disappointing. It's demoralizing. People cannot recover from that. A lot of people cannot recover. I'd even say if like you're 40 or 50, sometimes it's so difficult to recover because at that time, you probably already have children who are in the truth. Your wife or husband is in the truth. You probably work for a brother who's in the truth. You don't have a college degree, which is a big thing. You can't really escape, so you're stuck. You're stuck. And this kind of leads you to the point where you kind of ask some questions. You're like, well, does the governing body even care about these people? Because I know I'm not the only person who was literally just trying to do their best and didn't do anything wrong. But it almost seems like on their part, they're just heartless. They don't care about anybody else. From the example they're setting, they really don't care. People are out here suffering for them. People are literally dying. People are getting put in prison, being persecuted mercilessly in certain countries. And in the past, like, oh man, Malawi and Mexico, all those little small tidbits that you learn over time when you're looking into Watchtower history, you just become kind of disappointed. I became very disappointed. I was almost disgusted with myself that I was even involved in this organization. I felt like, man, I was actively trying to recruit people to be in this organization where this organization doesn't even care for them. The organization doesn't care for me. I felt like a horrible person. So before I stopped going to the meetings, I stopped going out in service. Yeah. Well, I think I've ran out of some things to say now. I've rambled on long enough. This is my first video. I'm planning on making some more videos. If you have any like questions or comments or something, like let me know. And if you know who I am, don't say a word, just text me. I mean, I'm just saying, like, I really don't want you to tell anybody who I am. I guess my voice is probably pretty distinct. I mean, you can kind of see a little bit of who I am, but not really. And I'd also kind of argue, well, if you're looking at these videos and watching them, maybe you're in the same boat as me. And if you are, go ahead and shoot me a text. I mean, you can easily find me. So, yeah. Thanks so much, guys, for watching. You can just leave a comment. I actually would prefer a comment more so than just a like, just so I can get your ideas on some stuff and what you guys probably went through. I mean, this is all kind of just like a healing process. Everyone can help each person out, and maybe we can. I mean, there's already an ExJW community, but we just form like a community and then actively try to help one another. Yeah. Thanks again. You guys have a good one.